listening to another episode of On Repeat, the podcast with me, Hattie Winter.
And with me, Ellie Rashid.
Ellie, can you believe that we are 10 episodes in?
I actually... 10. This year has gone so quickly and slowly at the same time. I mean, I kind of thought with lockdown it was really slow, but it also seems like yesterday.
Yep.
And doing all these remote podcasts has been pretty strange, but...
Very strange. It's now basically October. We're officially in autumn, I think.
January, February, December, isn't it?
Woohoo!
Anyway, for our 10th episode, we are going to be talking to Slow Shudder, aka Amanda Mayo, a Miami-born, Seattle-based recording artist, vocalist, producer, DJ, and coach.
Indeed, there are many strings to Amanda's bow, and that's also the same for her music. Her sound is super versatile and it encompasses so many genres such as indie, electronic, dance, experimental, and alternative music, and culminates in a way that can best be described as forward-thinking pop.
And we love to hear it. So very characteristic of our podcast. We've really got a fusion of lots of different genres and bringing you something new as usual.
Indeed. And before we do kick off the interview, a little bit more info, a little bit more context about the lovely Amanda. She released her debut single, Call You Back, in 2016, whilst obtaining her master's degree in popular music from Goldsmiths University of London at the exact same time. How many people can say that? Since then, she's been steadily releasing original music, collaborations and remixes, both independently and through labels. I definitely recommend checking out Interstellar on Spotify. These labels include the likes of Bitbird, Palettes, Next Wave, Ultra Music, Moving Castles, and Not Like That. She's also had releases featured by outlets including Earmilk, Acid Stag, Indie Shuffle, Asymmetric Magazine, She Makes Music, Chromatic Club, Burp FM, and Crack in the Road. As I said, one woman show, and we love to see it.
We love to hear it. I'd really recommend that you give Slow Shudder a listen. She's actually got a new single called Time Now for Ghosts, and it's out on October the 16th. It was written, produced, and mastered entirely by her. So, you know, Hattie, you were not wrong when you said that. She really is a one-woman show, which is fantastic.
Yes, it really, really is. So stay locked into this episode where we get a real overview of Amanda's career so far and the lessons she's learned. We go from living in more or less a cupboard and teaching herself GarageBand to working in a music licensing company, the trials and tribulations of being a DJ, and her newfound role as a coach, where she helps to build the confidence of other artists, imparts her knowledge, and supports them to understand the music business. So yeah, we hope that you enjoy. We hope that you love this story about someone whose career has gone from the East Coast to the West Coast of the USA, across the Pacific to Southeast London and back again. Don't forget that this was a lockdown episode, so you know our audio is not always going to be perfect, but hey ho, such is life. And don't forget we've got all of the links in the show notes. We'll tell you where you can find out more about Amanda, how you can pre-save her upcoming music, and how you can like us on Facebook at On Repeat the Podcast and follow us on Instagram with the same name. So yeah, hope you love it. P.S. If you heard some meowing, it's just my cat. He's absolutely fine. He just really wants to be on the podcast.
So my artist name is Slow Shudder. Real name Amanda Mayo. I am a recording artist, producer, DJ, vocalist, songwriter. Have worked in the music business behind the scenes as well. I am really excited to be here. Yeah.
We're so happy to have you.
That's such a great bio. And yeah, we're very happy to have you. You're very far away, but we're very happy to have you.
Slow Shudder.
Yeah.
How did you get that name? Where does that come from?
So I had a different name in New York when I started off as a producer and DJ, and I had no idea what I was doing. I went by an anagram of my name. That was anomaly code. Yeah. And I did, I started off making like really bad dubstep. And
hey, didn't we all?
Right. And I had been, DJing mostly, as a DJ. I'd been, playing a lot of parties in New York, ended up playing a lot of clubs. working in the corporate world. And as much as I enjoy doing that, I thought like, I really want to have a side project where I can release anything I want. Nothing, it doesn't have to be connected to dance music in some way or this project. So I was thinking about the different visual things that could represent like a shifting. And I thought about the slow shutter camera technique of having motion captured. So I was like, oh, this is cool because it can kind of capture the motion of myself on my journey as an artist. And I changed it to slow shutter to have it be kind of a play on words and have it be this more organic, like physical response as well. So it's not just a capture, but like an actual feeling and experience.
Wow.
That's really cool.
Oh, thanks.
That's I always wondered about where you got your name from, and that's a great story.
Yeah.
And forgive my ignorance, but was Dubstep big in New York? I always thought it really never left like wherever it came from.
I the company I worked for at the time for music licensing was based in the UK, and I had a ton of friends over there, just digital friends. And one of my coworkers was a UK funky DJ who sent me a bunch of music all the time, just saying like, oh, here's like what I'm getting in my promo emails that I think you might like. Because I had been into like glitch and like the stuff I was producing when I was like really first starting out, like 2007, around then, was like very strange. Like like kind of sounded like if Aphex Twin and Square Pusher were bad. Like, and I would like send him things. I'd be like, oh, do you have any production notes for me? And he'd be like, just keep going. Like, but he was very kind to like just open up my musical landscape and share a bunch of things that he'd been playing out at his shows. And I was getting into dance music on my own just through being hired to DJ, because friends of mine would be like, oh, you make music, you must DJ too. And I'm like, huh? But my first my first DJ sets were with like my sampler, like my APC 20, and I would like map everything in Ableton, like all the songs in Ableton on different squares, and like play different samples from different songs at different times. And it worked, but it was weird, and it took like hours and hours of prep. But
yeah, I can imagine. I'm like, yeah.
Like I played a wedding at that time, and I was so I wasn't used to getting requests. So people would come up and they'd be like, oh, can you play like this song by, Rihanna? And I'd be like, oh, yeah. And I'm like searching through for where is it in this 100+ song playlist. And I like start playing it, and it like starts like halfway through the first verse, and they're like, what's going on? And I'm like, I'm so sorry. But yeah, I know.
I feel so bad for DJs. I think we had a conversation with Charles Vaughan, someone else we were speaking to.
I love him.
You know Charles.
Oh, yeah, of course you know Charles. It's a small world, right?
Yeah. I mean, we were saying, because I don't DJ. I'd love to try at some point, but the whole thing with requests, like it does make you think twice, like I'm not gonna lie, there have been times where I've had a good time at a party and I have gone up to the DJ, and I should think twice about this now, but
it's fine. I mean, I honestly feel like most of the time, like now that I know what I'm doing, I've been DJing for 9 years, so I'm like, if someone comes up with a request, I'm like, I got you. And like before all of this started, I had some cool residencies where I was doing just pop and hip hop and R&B, and people would come up and they'd give me like $20 to play a request. And I'm like, you don't have to give me anything. Like, I'll take it.
Yeah.
Like go on.
Have you had any requests where you've just been like, nah, I can't play that? Like some that you've just not wanted to play? Or do you just play them?
I mean, I think for me, there was a time where I was a music snob, like definitely, earlier in my career, where I would be like playing more, I've made a lot of my income from music from playing corporate and club shows. And at the beginning of that journey, I would definitely have moments where I was like, ugh, I really don't like this music. But then the more I played it and the more I saw how people responded to it, the more I came to absolutely love it. So there's songs that like at the beginning of my journey, I would have scoffed at that now I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like making 100 people's night. Like I can't like hate on this. It's so powerful in that way that I have to respect it. But I would say the only things that I can't play when people come up is like someone will come up with their phone and they'll be like, I have this amazing song on YouTube. Can you play it? And I'll be like, if I don't have it on my flash drive, like I can't, because like to route like I'll have my laptop out sometimes, like put into the aux on the CDJs or the XDJs, just in case I have like a really difficult person who's like, I really want this particular song and for whatever reason I don't have it. But if it's something really obscure and I have to find it on YouTube, I can't like, risk like an ad playing out.
Yeah, I was just about to say.
Yeah.
This is sponsored by Squarespace.
Right. Exactly, like MailChimp. And I'm like, oh. But that's the only time I don't. I do have a sweatshirt, a jumper that I wear when it's cold, and I have a set that says requests with like a big line through it.
That's one way of dealing with it.
Yeah, definitely. When I play that, it shows people usually just don't request anything. But if they do, they'll usually apologize first, and then I'm like, no, it's fine. I'll make an exception.
Aww. And then they feel really special. I mean, that's really brave of that man to be like, here's my YouTube.
Oh,
clip. I'd never do that.
Multiple times. That I would say that's like once every 3 or 4 shows.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
People love their YouTube, I guess.
Yeah, and a lot of times I'm like, it's like something with like, 10 views. I'm like, it's super obscure and it makes me curious. I'm like, I want to hear this song. Like, you love this enough to bring it over to me. I'm like, is this your song? Like, there's always like this doubt in my mind.
Yeah.
I'm like, did you make this?
Yeah, are you user 12, 51,
exactly.
ABC?
Yeah.
It's really nice. It's really nice to hear that you've got like your own coping mechanisms in a way for things that happen, and like all sorts of strategies for the back pocket. And I'm also just like really fascinated to hear about the amount of things that you do. I mean, there's like DJing, producing, you work as an artist, you do a number of different things. And I mean, before we go into all of them, I was just wondering, do you ever find it a little bit isolating? Because I imagine that a lot of what you do is kind of, you're in your own space a lot, and obviously you get the requests and the interaction with the audience sometimes, but a lot of the time you're making these decisions on your own. You're curating playlists, I imagine. I mean, I'd love to know. It's a completely different world for me because I collaborate a lot as a musician and work a lot with live music. But I'd love to hear a different sort of perspective.
Yeah, I looked you up before all of this. I've just followed you on SoundCloud and stuff, and I'm really excited to hear your band. I honestly, when it comes to collaboration, like I'm very fortunate to get to collaborate a lot as well. But I also am very fortunate that I am like an extreme social introvert. So like I like enjoy social interactions, but I definitely like recharge on my own. And I've spent, weeks by myself before and not really thought twice about it, which I'm realizing as time goes on, especially through all of this, that's quite rare. Like I don't get that same kind of like, oh, I need people feeling that I think I'm realizing a lot of other people are like, they feel kind of an absence there. Whereas like that takes for me, I would say like 2 weeks or so. So working on music, like, I think it's very relaxing. Like when I'm by myself, I find that like more ideas come to me. I get in the zone a lot, in a deeper way than I do when I'm with other people. And my partner and I like are really fortunate that we found a house to move into that's like around the same price as our apartment right now. Because as you can see, I'm in my closet.
I did wonder.
So, because he's on a work call. But you know, with the lockdowns, one of our friends or our couple were in LA, stuck down there. So I was taking care of their plants, and they were like, you can just use our apartment if you want to work down there. And that was so incredible. Like I would like go down at like 9 a.m. I'd be like, bye babe, and I'd come back up at like 9 p.m. unless I was getting food. It's just like, yeah, I think isolating is something that I don't see as a bad thing. But I think what does feel bad is when, especially when I was first starting out, and part of why I came to Goldsmiths was because I felt like I didn't have like a network of other artists to bounce ideas off of and feel connected to in that way. Because I think what's really hard is, you know, at the beginning of my musical journey with all of this, I'd be making whips and just trying out different ideas. I want to send those to people to get feedback and know where to go next. And all of my friends, before I got into music production, I was a vocalist, like in a more serious way. And I did a lot of choir singing, and I went to NYU for vocal performance. So my friends were all incredible singers and incredible musicians, but I would show them my production and they'd be like, those are some weird sounds.
I feel like Goldsmiths is perfect for that as well. Like it so is, because I'm the same as you. Like I'm a vocalist, and you know, and you can do that shit, like you can do it, but Goldsmiths is like, hey, do you want to do this with your voice?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I can make that into something amazing, and I can get a qualification out of it. So.
Yeah.
It's a win-win. I feel like we've spoken about loads.
Yeah.
And I want to kind of backtrack and have like a timeline of like what you've done and when. So you were a DJ in 2009.
2000,
is that what you started as?
Like,
Seven?
No, I started producing 2007 when I was 19.
So you produced first?
Yeah, I produced first. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
I started off producing actually because I had like a pre-nodule on my vocal folds. And yeah, and which I had been training as a vocalist for a long time and had done, or not like proper training, I'd been just singing for a long time. When I was a kid, I did a lot of like regional theater and opera and various things. Like in operas, I was always like the gnome or like the little, you know, like just like a small figure wearing a mask running around. But I just like loved
me.
Yeah, like that's me. Yeah, I'm sure Ellie, you can like relate to the.
Yeah,
but
5'1" as well. I can definitely relate.
Yeah, oh, yeah. It's hard. Like when I got into NYU, I was so happy to be able to focus on voice in a new way. But once I got there, physically, it was a lot more challenging than I expected. And we were doing, you know, I was working the whole time I was in school, and I think that was a part of it too. Like I started working in nightlife when I was really young. When I got to New York, I mean, I had a fake ID when I was 14, and I was bartending when I was quite young. Yeah. And I got to New York, and I was like, oh, I can pay, you know, my way through school with this. And because I did get a scholarship, but not nearly large enough for what the cost of NYU and living in New York was.
Yeah.
So, you know, I was working some nights till 4, got home by 5, and I'd have to be at my lesson to sing at 9. And my teacher would be like, you sound like garbage. What's going on? And I was like, well, I have to work. Actually, at the time, I'd probably be like, but I have to work. And she made me go on full vocal rest. I was able to find like a job that didn't require me to be out so late, finally, like 2 years into my program. But up until then, you know, I was kind of like just like bouncing around between bartending and club jobs. And she was like, please take like a month off. Don't speak, don't sing. I just want you to like reset your vocal folds, because if you don't, you may have to have surgery. So I started making music in GarageBand then, because I was like really frustrated that I couldn't do anything else. Like I loved playing piano and guitar, but I wasn't like getting the full kind of musical fulfillment and challenge that I was used to as a vocalist primarily at the time. So I would take like recordings of myself and like warp them and make them like nightcore before I knew what nightcore was. And, like, just like mess with that and like chopped and screwed when I was like, you know, not really sure what that was either. And I would like take stuff and like really slow it down, like take something and make it like 40 BPM and like you just mess with the audio. And that like was so fun to me that I actually went to NYU and I was like asking my advisor if I could switch into music technology instead. But
wow.
Yeah, but they were like, if you do, you're going to lose your scholarship. You're going to have to do, I had come in with like some credits ahead of time so that I could do 3 years full time. And then my 4th year, I was able to work full time and then just be in class part time. And they were like, if you switch, you're going to have a full four years with like a full-time schedule, and I just couldn't afford it. So I was like, okay, I'll finish the vocal degree, but just keep doing this for fun on the side. And I took a bunch of electives in production because we could choose any kind of music-related elective that we wanted. And I switched to Logic after the first class. And yeah, just for a while.
You're like, I'm done, GarageBand.
Yeah.
Like, thank you, but goodbye.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, you know, it's quite expensive, like the software. So I only had Logic Express on my computer. And I was using Logic Pro on campus. But then when I graduated, I was like, oh no, like, how am I going to make like music the way I wanted? That's when I switched to Ableton, because I like was researching. I went to a bunch of like free workshops in New York for production, and they were like, a lot of times they were sponsored by Ableton, even if they weren't like necessarily for Ableton, which I thought was cool. And I decided to try out Ableton with my first paycheck from my music licensing job, which at the time was an internship. I paid like my rent, and then my second paycheck, I started like, I put like Ableton on a credit card and started like putting money towards Ableton. And yeah, just like built up anytime I had any extra cash. I lived in a closet, so it was great. Like I was only paying $700 a month in New York, which is like unheard of. So I was like, oh my gosh, like I just keep living in this closet until I have all the gear that I want. But yeah, that was like the first like 4 or 5 years of producing. It was just me and like my weird sounds. And when I got into it a bit more, I feel like I've had a much slower journey than a lot of people, just because so much of it was just me figuring it out on my own. But when I was in my music licensing job, I got that when I graduated in 2010. And it was really eye-opening for me because it was a startup. So it's called Audio Network. Is the company, and they're quite big now. But at the time, I was the 7th person hired in New York. They had like a bigger team in London and Maplestead, which is out near Colchester. And my team was just like, you know, they were very diverse. Like everyone was from like a different background and in the music industry, and they were all like just very throwing me into the fire basically with everything. Like on my first day, my supervisor was like, oh, like, you know, put together these playlists for this thing. And I was like, oh, okay. like 22, I had no idea what I was doing. And I was like, I've never listened to much bossa nova outside of what I've sung in choirs. And they were like, make this bossa nova playlist for this Canadian TV client. Whoa. And I was like, okay. And I'm like searching this library, is this bossa nova? And like I had my supervisor yell at me, and I cried. But like I cried almost every day, I think, like at that job at the beginning. just because I wanted so badly to do a good job. And I like felt like any mistake was like, I'm gonna get fired, just because, you know, the recession at the time, job security was so low. Like the fact that I had anything outside of a bar after working in bars for like 8 years. Well, I worked in things other than bars, but like I just assumed I would be like bartending for a while. So I was so grateful to be there, and I wanted so badly to be like perfect employee. But, you know, I think that was like, it just extended, my journey with production and DJing, because I was doing a full-time job, which often had me working like 9 or 10 hours a day. I mean, you both know how the music industry is, and you finish and you go to a networking event or you go to a party and the job just keeps going.
God, it never
I never.
Like in a good way,
Exactly.
you could just like keep going on and on.
Yeah. Like the number of times I was out until like 2 a.m. with a client, and I would be like, is this appropriate? Like some like 40-year-old man like telling me like all of his like troubles, but I'd be like, should I go home? Shouldn't you go home? Like, I know you're sad, but like I'm like, I could be your kid. Like, I know it's a weird world, but I learned a lot, and I tried to just absorb as much as I could. I mean, there were plenty of moments where I felt quite frustrated, but I think that's just the case in the music industry for anyone who's not a straight white man. So, you know, salary things that I realized only later, I could have been getting much more. But that's, you know.
Hindsight is a wonderful thing, isn't it?
Yeah. But
and
when I came,
you could have been like, I didn't have to live in this closet.
yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, I didn't have to live in this closet. I lived in it was like a 1-bedroom with a storage unit, and I lived in what was the storage unit. So you would open the door, and it would just be my twin single bed there, and I put all my stuff on the walls. I know, ridiculous. Now thinking about it, I'm like, huh? Like, how did I do that? But it didn't really bother me. I was just happy to have my own room. But yeah, no, I feel like this is taking so many twists and turns.
I know, and I love it.
Okay, good.
I love it so much.
It's like hard. I'm like, how do I condense like 12 to 13 years into a little timeline? But Goldsmiths,
that's crazy.
I was 26, and at my job, I was hoping to start like some sort of like, I was a creative consultant, so I was like pitching playlists. By the time I was there for like 3 years, I was like essentially like working directly with clients. I had amazing clients that I really loved, from companies that I think are really cool, and production companies as well as like brands. And I was very lucky to get to work across like all the different sectors, which a lot of companies, they'll kind of put you in a sector like, oh, you work with the ad space or you work with TV. And I was just like creative across the board. And it would be like bigger projects. So like putting together like 250 plus songs in like a couple hours, which I knew the catalog well enough that you know, I could do that. And
that's incredible. How did you get into that?
I mean, honestly, they were hiring an intern to do basically just anything. And
wow.
Yeah, I was just out of school. It was August when I applied. And they were like, oh, we need an intern to do mostly data entry, some creative work. It'd be great if it was someone who was familiar with the music industry, and a musician themselves, for possible like playlist building. So I sent over like a ridiculous like essay of a cover letter where I'm like, I want to be a music supervisor because I think that Michael Giacchino made like an amazing like soundtrack for this and that, and like I love this person and that person, like looking up every show and movie I've ever loved the music for and being like, I love them and I want to be like them. And they miraculously hired me. I had worked as an intern for a singer-songwriter, and I managed to pitch one of his tracks around a bunch, and he got on an HBO show. So I did have that in my wheelhouse. Yeah. So that was cool. And they were like, oh, well, you did that on your own, not knowing anything. So by the time I got there, I feel like I knew enough about how the industry works to have like an internship, but I feel like my first 2 years was like a whole nother degree because I just learned so much. And my colleagues would just, again, like, you know, they'd give me a deadline and they'd give me a brief and they'd be like, okay, yeah, put together 20 hip hop tracks between 90 and 105 BPM for this client. It has to have an optimistic feeling. You need to find a sting that'll work at the end for when it goes to commercial. And MTV needs it by 3. And I'd be like, it's due. So that was how I learned, was just like doing it over and over again and getting feedback.
So did that inform your music making? Was it like, so they're looking for like X and I need to kind of adopt a bit of that X. Do you think that your music changed after that? Or
I think my music, if anything, it changed more based on what I was into as a DJ. Not as much what I was doing with sync. Like I was very inspired by certain artists that I discovered through the process of getting references. Like I discovered Ibeyi, if you know them, through a brief. They're really cool. I can send you a link after. But I remember being like, oh my God, like they're so amazing. And it was before they had kind of taken off a bit. So that was something I was really grateful for. I would say like it definitely affected my music making, but in a more subconscious way. Because I can't write to brief. I try so hard. Some artists are incredible at it. They're like my partner, he can get like, oh, like, because we make some media music together now, and they'll be like inspiring future bass, like Chainsmokers-esque, 116 BPM, A minor, go. And he's like, and it comes out so good, and it's not a carbon copy, but it's still like very much in the vein of that artist. Whereas like for me, I'll try and do something like that and it'll just always end up sounding a bit weird. So it's just my curse.
It's amazing like hearing everything that you've done. And how did you then get into coaching artists? Because I'm quite interested in the coaching aspect, because I guess a lot of what I do is coaching as well. And like one of my companies are actually considering paying us practitioners to do a life coaching course. And I'm so aware that that's a real like particular skill, with huge relation back to boundaries again. And I wonder, I'm very interested in the correlation that has with music and why you were drawn to that aspect of it.
Yeah, I mean, to be totally honest, I was not really looking to get into coaching. It kind of came about naturally. This has all happened just through the lockdown. So I had been doing some coaching without realizing it was coaching when I was teaching more like workshop-based things. So after Goldsmiths, I've taught a few workshops and on music production and singer-songwriting, or like songwriting and singing, and how to record yourself as a top liner. So like if you're someone who's collaborating with musicians as like the singer-songwriter for the song, how to best, vocal produce your stuff so that, everything sounds great, and how to work with people from a business point of view, from that side of things. And as I was kind of going along, I would tell people at the workshops, like, oh, if you want to hit me up with questions, like, please go ahead. I'm happy to chat with you later. And friends of mine that I spoke with, we had, a kind of mutual coaching between us where like, we'd be sending things back and forth, and not just music, like how can I best go about this release process? Like, does this cover art look like it matches with the song? And, you know, when I was making my most recent release, like my EP, like as a solo artist, I, you know, could not have done it without the coaching of like so many of my friends. And I've learned so much from them. And through all of this, like, some of my friends were like, asking me for a bit more advice than usual because they were home a bit more than usual and had the time to really get into things that they normally wouldn't be able to do. And one of my friends was like, hey, I want to do like a pretty big pivot from being like a more EDM based artist and video game music based artist into pop. And he was like, of all the people I've met, all of the friends I've made throughout my time in the music scene, like, you've been working the most in the pop world. And I said, sure, like, I don't really know. I haven't done one-on-one coaching before, but I'm like happy to do it. Like, I haven't done it professionally. And then it was really, it felt like a combination of like being a professor, because like I'm finding all these resources for him and I'm like talking him through more theoretical things. And then like a music producer, like mentor, where I'd, you know, be giving advice on the sonic quality of things. And that both of those things hybrid with like a therapist almost, where it's like, hey, like this is, you know, something. I'm a bit older than him. I mean, I'm a bit older than most of the people I know in the music scene. So a lot of times I'll just be like, I hear you. I know where this, you know, fear is coming from in my own life. And here are the things that have worked for me. Here are the things I wish I'd done differently. I can't promise that they're going to be perfect strategies for you, but like, hopefully my expertise can, just through experience and me making tons of mistakes, I hope that can inform you to make less mistakes. But yeah, he's been, I'm so proud of what he's done so far. We've been working together for about 2 months now. You know, it's been really amazing to watch him grow, not just as an artist, but as a person. I mean, he's wonderful and has all of the tools in the toolkit that you need to do this. But for him, the biggest challenge that we've been working on together is confidence and just knowing how best practices for like releasing things that, you know, aren't EDM, because EDM has a very specific promotional and voice, I would say, for a lot of artists. And it's just kind of like, it's a bit like, to me, it's just become a bit stale. I mean, there's a reason so many EDM artists, like formerly EDM artists, have pivoted into different styles because, you know, you can only do a certain thing sonically for so long before like you and the audience are going to be like, all right, like this again.
Next thing.
So, and he feels that. So I think, you know, sending him artists that he's never heard of, sending him, he wasn't very aware of like blogs in general that weren't connected to EDM. So I was like, even just yesterday we had a call and I was sending him like Crack Magazine. And I was like, you should go through like every artist that they've featured over the last like month and listen to them and find, you know, look at their, I think he's like, you know, thinking about aesthetics right now a lot. And I was like, look at the aesthetics here, like see what inspires you. Because there's no clear answer. Like, that's something that I feel has been eye-opening for me being on the coach end of the relationship. Is a lot of times he'll say, like, tell me what to do. And I'll say, you know, I'll like flip that on him and be like, if you want to be connected to yourself and to your art, you have to ask yourself, what do I want to do? Because if I tell you what to do, I can craft you into an idea of what I think you could be tomorrow. But will you connect with that? probably not. Like, the only person who really knows that is yourself. But I think the accountability of him knowing we're going to talk every week, knowing that I am going to ask him questions, tough questions about how much has he been working, how much does he feel connected to the work, how much has he been working in ways that are smart versus ways that are, you know, I think expected. That's like something, a lot of like the grind mentality and the workaholic mindset was something I was very trapped within for a long time, where I'd be like, I have to write every day for hours. And like, even if I don't feel like it, I have to show up and I have to make something. And you know, you can do that and a good song will come out every so often. But like, I realized, you know, over the past few years, actually, just how powerful it is to rest. So
Yeah,
that's been something I've been telling him is like be diligent about your rest the way you are about your work. And then the work that comes will come from a place that's a bit more natural and less forced.
Yeah, it's so true, especially in creative industries. I think it's, yeah, what you're saying about the grind and people I know who aren't musicians and just, you know, go for it with their work. You need that space. You need that creative space and time. And actually it can be just as valuable as the grind, as it were. Because it's not like, you know, I don't know. Yeah, I could probably churn out a few average emails or something, but it's like turning out average songs, you know. It's like it's better to just have less that are actually of quality than loads. But no, I think it's so interesting the way that you speak about it. Actually, my neighbor is a life coach, and she was saying a really similar thing to you, as like it's sort of facilitating people to make and giving them the tools to make their own decisions, rather than this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do, here's your checklist, there you go, done. It's really, you know, I think it's such a special skill actually to be able to do that. So yeah, it's such a special quality that you have, and I'm so like, it's so lovely to hear that you've got a wonderful portfolio career in music that utilizes all of these skills that are so creative and artistic. It's just wonderful to hear.
It's so nice to hear that. So thank you. I feel like there's so many times where I have this like strange imposter syndrome, especially when I'm starting something new, like the coaching, where I'm like, you know, I end the call and I feel good and I'm like, okay, I think I really helped, and like I'm excited to see what he makes. And then like I'm falling asleep that night and I'm like, did I say something stupid? Did I say something like, you know, was I actually helpful? And that's, you know, just the anxiety brain speaking. So I and like, you know, same with career. Like I look back sometimes on my career and I'm like, okay, yeah, I've done some really cool things and I'm really proud of what I've made. And then there's other days I look back and I'm like, I've made nothing. I've never done anything close to what I'm capable of, and like I never will. And like that's that strange, I think, dynamic that actually like makes, from people that I've learned from, like I think that makes a good teacher for me personally, because I think that experience of constantly questioning is what I think leads a lot of people to answers that they wouldn't normally find. Because, you know, if you're being lectured to and you're like, hey, like, here's how you do it. You know, that's all well and good in a way. And especially for certain fields, it's like, okay, you're finding, you have a path towards what you want to do as an engineer, for instance. Like if you're like an architect and you're making a building, like you want to have exact information because it's very important that you do, for things to fit together and for things to operate properly. But with music, I feel like so much of it is nebulous, and you know, you're on your own kind of, you're in this space that is constantly changing, like internally and externally. So it's like, how do you navigate that? There is no path. Every person's gonna navigate it differently. So yeah, it's nice to hear that, just because I feel like, yeah, it's I think I should probably be like kinder to myself in that way sometimes.
Exactly. I think it's very easy for people in roles like yours to not listen to what you preach necessarily?
Yeah, exactly. I feel like I have so many questions for both of you, and I like have been talking so much.
No, it's about you. It's not about
Yeah,
us.
exactly. I mean, I still have questions for you because you're in Seattle at the moment.
Yeah.
You've lived in like loads of places
Yeah.
in the US and around the world.
Yeah, I mean, around the world, just London, but
Wow,
yeah.
London's a big place.
Yeah, it's a big place. God, I love London. I miss it so much. But yeah, no, I grew up in Miami. I'm from there, and yeah, and I moved to New York when I was 18. And I lived there until I was 27. And then I moved to London for my master's. I was in London until early 2017. And then when my visa was up, I left kicking and screaming. And I was like, oh, God, don't make me leave. Went back to Miami for a few months just to save up some money while I was working for my friend Steven's startup, Spinbox, which is like a DIY record player. And yeah, he's so amazing.
I remember like seeing this on like your Instagram as well. And being like, oh, this looks really cool.
It's super cool, right? He's so cool. He's a great person and an incredible DJ. But yeah, no, I worked a little bit online remotely because he was going between Taiwan and London, and then saved up enough to go to LA, and I was in LA for about a year, and then I moved up to Seattle because my partner's up here, and there was a heat wave in LA, and I was living in my studio was also like my living space, so it was just like just a bit bigger than this closet. And I feel like this whole podcast I've been living in all these closets, and I've been so happy. This
Well,
one
we
had a
know what
window.
the cover is going to be for this episode.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, I loved LA. I still do. But it was just really hot. There was a heat wave there, and my partner was in town for a show, and we were at my like little studio space, and it was 115 Fahrenheit. So I think that's like 43.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's really high.
It was really high, and I was like struggling. He was like vomiting from like how hot it was, and like it was really bad. And I turned to him and I was like, I know this sounds really crazy, and like again, like this is me being very impulsive, but it worked out this time. I was like, what if we just rent a U-Haul on Sunday morning and drive all my stuff back, and I promise I'll get you to work on time. And he was like, so you want to move in with me? And I was like, yeah, do you want to? And so we did that. And then I had to come back and like obviously like sort everything out like later, but yeah, no, I've lived in Seattle since then.
Is the other music scenes very different, or do you have like a favorite music scene out of the places you've lived, or?
I think Seattle, I definitely will say, has surprised me. I think I've played more shows and more I've had more opportunities here than I have had in previous cities, just because I think they have a very deep respect for the local music scene, and they make a big effort to support artists here. So I've had opportunities, like I got to play my first big festival here, Capitol Hill Block Party, and like Lizzo was the headliner, and I was just like, oh my God, I'm sure gonna line up with Lizzo.
Oh my God.
I know. I was obviously at 5 p.m, and she was like on late, but it was still
God, that's amazing.
mind-blowingly grateful for that. But yeah, no,
I love her so much.
I've
gotten into roller skating, and she's the only person. I just listen to her on repeat.
Yeah, same.
Oh my God.
I can't get enough.
So
she's just
so good.
Yeah.
I want to try and get her on the show.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do it. That would be the best. Oh gosh. Yeah, no, she is honestly like so incredible. But yeah, no, I think with Seattle, like I've gotten a lot of cool things here. Also just, I have been doing this for a long time. I have to remind myself. So I'm like, okay, no, it's also partially due to that. But I love the London scene I love the Southeast London scene, for how...
Hell yeah.
Yeah, I loved living in New Cross, and I was just, first I lived in the dorm, and then I lived in a shared house on Charlots. It was like the house was mostly musicians, and I feel like, that had its challenges, but at the same time, I feel like there's just a closeness and a level of support and a level of people wanting to collaborate and wanting to meet up and wanting to do stuff musically that was really, really inspiring. I felt constantly inspired there, and as a writer especially, and same with LA. LA, you meet people at a party and they're like, oh, you want to have a writing session? That's just a normal thing to do. New York, I loved for other reasons, but it's very cold and competitive in that way. Trying to get things done over there required a lot more scheduling. Everyone always had 3 jobs, so myself included. So it's okay, I'm free 4 Sundays from now from noon until 3. and someone would be okay, I can do, all right, 4 Sundays from now, I can do from 1 until 4, and it's just negotiating okay, we got from 2 to 3 or 1 to 3. So yeah, I think that's it's an amazing place, and once you're really getting going there, obviously you've got tons of people to work with and play with, but I would say getting started there, I would say move to Brooklyn, firstly.
Oh, that's the dream,
right?
That's the dream.
Thank you so much to Amanda for the lovely, lovely interview. We did speak to her, I think it was her 10 a.m. So, we really did take over a morning for this. So thank you for that. We really appreciate it. And we hope that you guys have all loved the interview as well, as much as we did. You can find out more about Slow Shudder by looking her up on all the usual places. She's on Spotify and Apple Music, and her Instagram and Facebook are both Slow Shudder, and her Twitter is slow_shudder, but we'll have all the links in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of On Repeat, our 10th episode. We hope that you are enjoying it. Do share it with a friend, your family, a loved one, in your Instagram stories, all that jazz. We love it. So yeah, see you for another wonderful episode next week.
You've enjoyed the episode and want to keep us on repeat. You can follow, subscribe, and like us on your podcast platform of choice, and slide into our DMs on Instagram by following us at On Repeat the Podcast. All information will be included in the show notes.
On Repeat was made, produced, and edited by us, and the theme music is an original piece by Ellie's jazz band, Fujiyama, and wonderfully resampled by Dee, the producer for the podcast. All of our guests give us permission to use their music. Thanks again for listening, and don't forget to keep it on repeat.